Hello and welcome. Mrs. Redneck here, and today we're going to be making salsa fresca. Fresh tomato salsa is a staple in our household and my family loves it. Today I'm going to be showing you almost my best way to make it, and I'll explain that, but here is a list of ingredients that you can screenshot for future reference. You'll notice some things are in bold. That means these are must-haves. Things that are not in bold and are in italics are things that are good to add, but the salsa will be okay if you need to do without. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. Let's take a look at our ingredients here. We have fresh tomatoes. You can use a single kind of tomato, but again, the best way is a combination of tomatoes, and the really best way is if those tomatoes come from the garden. Today I have Roma tomatoes. I have it's kind of a beefsteak slicing tomato, and this is more your regular sort of early girl or better boy style tomato, and they have subtle differences that come together nicely in a salsa. We're going to chop those fine, so it's important to have a sharp knife. Otherwise, the chopping will turn the tomatoes into mush. I'll show you what that looks like shortly. We have fresh jalapeno peppers, Vidalia onion, of which I'm just going to use a little. Some people like a lot of onion in their salsa, and you can make yours the way you like it. Fresh garlic, cayenne peppers that I have jarred from a previous garden year, and I'm going to use fresh lime zest and juice today. You'll notice on the recipe it also says you can use red wine vinegar. I would do either or, not both. In terms of other tools, I like to use this side of my grater to grate or to take the zest off of the lime. I'm going to use a small food chopper for these ingredients. I'll hand chop the tomatoes, but you could do it all by hand and it'll be just fine. Fresh herbs are a treasure. We have here two that look a lot alike. This is cilantro and this is flat leaf parsley, which I believe has a better flavor. You can tell the difference basically by rubbing the leaves and smelling it if you can't tell from looking. I have a basil plant here. I do not buy fresh basil at the store. It's too expensive and fragile, but I try to grow basil every year, and this one will be moved out to the garden shortly as we're early in our season. And you'll need salt and pepper. And here we go. I've started chopping the tomatoes here so you can see what size we're going for. I put it in a small colander over a bowl so the juices can run down there. You could put it over the sink. I just wanted you to be able to see it. So my fingers are curved, so I'm not chopping the tips of my fingers, hopefully. And then I'll go crossways the other side. So this is not bad. You don't want large chunks of tomato because then it'll just feel like, I don't know, spicy tomato salad. You want to have that salsa experience. And you can decide, how small is the right texture for you. You also don't want it to be, fresh tomato soup, so somewhere in between. Okay, this is pretty good, but I like it a little smaller, so I'm just going to take my knife and run it right over the tomatoes again. You might not see the difference there, but it's a little bit. And then I'll add those to the colander and move on to the next tomato. Now, in these videos I like to give you something for your heart as well as for your home. And King David, I'm continuing to prep the tomatoes. And I like to give you something both for your heart and for your home in these videos. And for your heart today, I was thinking about in Psalm 23, how King David said, he was speaking about God, "My soul thirsts for you, my flesh longs for you in a dry and weary land where there's no water." He goes on to describe how his relationship with God, understanding God's power, and experiencing God's loving kindness satisfies his soul like the body is satisfied by the richest of food, or the best salsa. Reading the Bible, praying, and worshiping God are necessary for our souls as much as food and water are necessary for our bodies. This fresh salsa we're making will be delicious and satisfying, but next time I'm going to want fresh salsa again. Similarly, our souls need fresh reminders of who God is and fresh experiences of worship, prayer, and thanksgiving to stay healthy. I'm finished chopping the tomatoes, and I do that first so that they can drain while the rest is prepared. Now I'm going to use lime juice today, as I explained. If we roll the lime with a little pressure, it'll be easier to get the juice out. But if we zest it first, before we juice it, it'll be easier to get the zest off. So the zest is the green part before you get down to the white part. It has citrus oil in it and is very, very flavorful. I don't need the zest of the whole lime, certainly for this much salsa. So I'm going to make my way around once. I know there's a measurement on the recipe, but you know, that's just because there's supposed to be measurements on recipes. I think I will stick to the, there's 2 tablespoons on the recipe. I mean, I wrote the recipe, so we'll see how much juice we get. We don't want our salsa to be too watery, which is why we cut the tomatoes first, so the extra liquid can drain and the flavor of all of these ingredients can really infuse the tomatoes and not become part of. There's no seeds in the lime, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the pulp right in there. And I think that will be enough. I'll set that aside. I've got the basil leaves. I don't really need all the stems, but the chopper will do the rest of the work. I am a fan of cilantro. I realize there are 1 or 2 of you out there who are not. In that case, do not make this salsa with just basil, or it will taste like spaghetti sauce. But go ahead and put some parsley in, if you can handle that. I'm going to use, I don't know how hot these jalapenos are. I had some recently that were like green peppers. That was disappointing. So I think I'm going to put 2 of these fresh jalapenos in. This is also why we started growing our own, but these happen to be store-bought. Okay, put those cayenne peppers in there. 2 cloves of garlic. I'd say that's at your discretion, but it is fresh garlic, so you know, if you're making this salsa a couple hours ahead of time, it is going to, the garlic is going to permeate over time, and so a few hours later or the next day it's going to be more garlicky than it was if you taste it right when you assemble the salsa. In fact, right when you assemble the salsa, it's going to taste kind of raw rather than fresh. I'm going to smash those cloves just to help release some of the oils. I'm only going to take, this is a small onion to begin with. Sometimes I don't put onion in our salsa at all. Now other people, I realize, they might want a whole cup of chopped onion in there, and do as you will. That, I believe, is a matter of taste. Now I do want the lime juice in that food chopper bowl. That's because I need something liquid in there to help combine the ingredients. We'll chop this up and I'll be right back to assemble the salsa. From here it's pretty simple. Let me show you what happened underneath the tomatoes. We're collecting this liquid off the tomatoes that we don't want in our salsa because A, we don't want to dilute it too much, and we don't want that you know, too runny if you're putting it on top of food. Those tomatoes look lovely. We'll add all the chopped ingredients that you just saw me put into the food chopper. Notice I didn't grind it up so fine as to be like pesto. There's still definitely some texture to this combination, which is nice. Okay, and then last, we'll add about a teaspoon of salt. This happens to be kosher salt. Okay, look, just for you, I'll measure a teaspoon. Voila! Teaspoon. And this is ground pepper. It's not ground yet, so I'm going to eyeball a half a teaspoon. You can use already ground pepper if that is what you have on hand. And you can always add more. Although I tell you, when you first taste this, after you combine it, it will not be accurately reflecting, you know, what the final taste is going to be, because it takes time for the flavors to meld. So if you're making tacos like I am tonight, or some other dish, and you want fresh salsa, I would say start the salsa first. And then you can put it in the refrigerator and let those flavors be combining. Even just having an hour to combine makes a difference on the flavor. This will last a couple of days if you need it to, but the amount of time that fresh salsa stays fresh really depends on the quality of the ingredients that you put in. So we'll just have to leave that to your discretion and learning. depending on what tomatoes you have. Now notice I didn't use cherry tomatoes. That's for two reasons. One, they're sweeter than I like for salsa, and two, they have a pretty high skin to pulp ratio, I guess. So it's a personal preference, but that's why I don't. So, bon appetit, and maybe I shouldn't say that in French. Enjoy your salsa fresca. There is a Redeemer, Jesus, God's own Son, precious Lamb of God, Messiah, Holy One. Jesus, my Redeemer, name above all names, precious Lamb of God, Messiah, oh, for sinners slain. Thank you, oh my Father, for giving us your Son and leaving your Spirit till the work on earth